Good morning. It is 6 a.m. on Tuesday, and I have to get up because we got a long day ahead of us.
Indeed I did. Hello everyone, and welcome to Amusement Adventures, the series where I document my day at a park, reviewing the rides I rode, the food I ate, and even the journey to get there. I'll cover it all. But where are we going in this episode's adventure, you may be wondering? And that's a great question. Today we are visiting Knott's Berry Farm in Buena Park, California, and it's sure to be one heck of an interesting day. But before we even think about the adventure ahead, let me tell you a little bit more about this wonderful little farm. Knott's was founded in 1920 by Walter and Cordelia Knott when they began farming on 10 acres of land in Buena Park, California. They opened a small berry stand on the side of the road to sell berries and eventually built a full retail complex. At one point, the Knott family began selling fried chicken dinners made by Cordelia Knott in the complex. The chicken dinners became so popular that guests would wait hours just for a taste of that delectable home-cooked fried chicken. Walter Knott wanted a way to entertain all the hungry patrons while they were waiting for their name to be called by the loudspeaker. So, he first built a volcanic rock oasis, but when that was not enough to satisfy the old farmer, he began construction on a replica ghost town to entertain his guests. You see, Walter Knott had always been fascinated with the Old West, the tales of cowboys bravely taming the wild, unforgiving West, so a ghost town was the perfect thing for him to build. And, as the popularity of the chicken dinner restaurant grew, so did Ghost Town, to the point of eventually adding rides like the famous Calico Mine Ride and the Timber Mountain Log Ride, eventually growing to become the theme park we know and love today, and the park that I was about to set out for. So, I climbed out of bed, guzzled some water down, and climbed down the ladder out of my bedroom to get ready for the rest of the day. After quickly chowing down on a bowl of cereal, taking a shower, and of course brushing my teeth, I quickly went online to check the scheduled ride closures for the day. Okay, so great news. Pretty much everything is open except a couple of the kiddie rides and Montezuma's Revenge, which is sad, but we already knew about that one, so we're good. That's good. Now, just because it says that they are not going to be closed on the scheduled closures app doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be open. They could still go down due to something, unrelated or some sort of issue that the ride has during the day. That's why they have this huge footnote, a really top note right here that says attractions and their availability subject to change without notice. So that's why they have that. But it's a really good sign that all the good rides and all except Montezuma, but all the good rides are going to be open. So that's wonderful. Sadly, as you will see, that little disclaimer would spell out exactly what would happen to us during our day. But we'll get to that. For now, I need to make sure I had everything I needed for the day. So I checked my backpack just to be absolutely sure I didn't forget anything. Luckily, I didn't, and now the only thing left to do was slip on my sandals, take a deep breath, and step outside. Oh, that wasn't that hard. Absolutely gorgeous day outside today. It sure was, and it was made even more lovely by the sight of a warm car already waiting for me. Now, obviously, I would not be the one driving us to the park. I mean, look at this face. Does it look like it can drive 104 miles without causing a crash that ends in a fiery blaze of death? No, it does not. And that's where this guy comes in. Sam, our driver, whom without we would not be going to this trip at all, and a certified gamer? Sorry, Sam, I couldn't think of anything else to say there. Sam and I would also be joined by Garrett, an artist whose wit and character is just as great as the art he draws. Morning, Garrett.
Morning.
Lovely day.
It is. That's it.
That's it, okay. And Joel, a man whose curious nature and inquisitive mind caused him to make a podcast named after a monkey. But now that the group was all together, it was time to hop into the car and set off for the farm. And after a quick pit stop at the gas station to fill up the car with some absolutely ridiculously priced gas, and fill our stomachs up with some snacks and drinks, it was off for us again. And after being stuck in not the best traffic for a while,
Well,
Traffic.
do you know why?
we could finally see the tip of Supreme Scream peeking over the horizon. Excitement entered the whole car as we approached the park. And that excitement only increased once we were out of the car, walking toward the park. And once we saw Ghostrider running in all of its wooden glory, we became all the more eager to get into the park and ride that beast. So after a quick stop at the restroom, we entered the park and walked through Ghost Town, right up to the entrance of this absolutely crazy ride. Entering into Ghostrider's queue, we traversed a cold and dark mineshaft.
Guys, I'm so scared.
Before coming out into a clearing where the line already began. This was the moment when I knew it'd be a busy day, but for now, I was perfectly content to wait in a long line. A line that ended up being about an hour and 45 minutes. And after waiting in line for that long, we were all very eager to board our trains and saddle up for the wildest ride in the West. Ghostrider begins with a mild turn out of the station that actually has some surprising laterals that you might not expect. That is just a taste of the craziness that is about to come. After this turn, you begin to ascend the clackety lift hill to the top of the ride. And just like you would expect from a wooden coaster, it does take a while to get up there. But once you finally do get there, you crest and begin dropping. The drop is certainly better in the back of the train, as you get some great floater airtime getting pulled over the crest. At the bottom of the drop, you experience some great positive G's, as well as some crazy laterals as the track bends to the left. The intensity is also amplified by the fact that you're flying through the ride structure, which, as you will see, is sort of a theme with this ride. Then, you pop up into a traditional camelback that gives decent pop-up ejector in the front and lovely floater airtime in the back. After that, you rise up into a very long turnaround. The turnaround does not feature much banking, and it has a dip in the middle to increase speed and laterals. The drop off this turnaround does give some alright floater airtime in the back, but doesn't do anything much in the front. Once you complete the drop off the turnaround, you'll fly over an S-hill. The hill does not give a whole lot of airtime because of how elongated the element is. However, it does give some great laterals because of the S-shaped profiling. Up next is my personal favorite element of the ride, the second turnaround, and more specifically, the drop off the turnaround. You rise up into the turnaround with absolutely zero banking, and since you still have quite a bit of speed, you get thrown into the side with some crazy laterals, while also getting a great view of the whole park in front of you. And then, after swiftly passing over a straight section of track where the mid-course brake run used to be, you plummet down an incredibly steep drop into the ride support structure. This drop is the main reason why I choose to sit in the back on most rides. In the back, the ride whips you over the drop with an incredible amount of force, offering one of my favorite moments of ejector airtime that I've experienced. That, combined with the head choppers from the supports flying by, makes this moment one of the most legendary moments on a coaster that I have experienced. And it's the perfect way to kick off one of the most legendary second halves on a coaster that I have experienced. Sadly, this drop is not quite as intense or powerful in the front, only providing weak floater at best, which is why I nearly always sit in the back. However, this legendary drop is only the beginning, as after this drop you pop up into an airtime hill that starts off normal, but then wildly banks to the left at the top, giving you a sudden burst of laterals at the apex. Laterals are always made better when paired with a sharp burst of airtime. You then go over a hill that is basically the inverse of the last hill. You start the hill banking to the left before snapping back to level at the apex. This hill does not give as much airtime as the last, but it does give some excellent laterals. The next element is a double up, where the first pop-up is shaped normally, but the second one once again banks to the left and leads into the next turnaround. Both pops up give a little ejector in the front, but only mild floater at best in the back, and the second pop offers some laterals. You then navigate the next turnaround. Once again, the turnaround is minimally banked, but this one features an even more dramatic dip than the first one in the middle, causing the speed and laterals to be amplified. After dropping down from this turnaround, you charge over a very parabolic airtime hill, giving excellent ejector in the front and very strong floater in the back. This hill then leads into what might be the most famous part of the ride, the end helix. This helix offers the best and most sustained laterals that I have personally experienced. It is almost no banking, and you charge through it with an insane amount of speed. It also, a lot like the first and second turn, has a dip in the middle, increasing both the speed and already insane laterals. The helix pins you to the side of the train with incredible force. I can barely move my body for the majority of the turn. And this power is incredibly sustained, with the helix lasting almost 10 seconds, before hopping up into one last little bunny hop, supplying riders with one last pop of airtime into the brakes. And so concludes your epic ride on Ghostrider. From the intense airtime to the incredibly powerful laterals, I have to give this ride a 9.5 out of 10. Nearly perfect, and currently my favorite roller coaster I have ever ridden. After hopping off our incredibly exciting first ride of the day on Ghostrider, we were all feeling a little hungry after waiting in line for nearly 2 hours. So we headed to Wagon Wheel Pizza, secured our tasting cards for the Boysenberry Festival, and began to try some delectable boysenberry treats. The first boysenberry themed item I decided to try was the crab sushi roll with boysenberry aioli. It was very nicely plated in its purple container, and as you can see, I thought it was quite good.
Oh yeah, that's really good.
It was really just your standard California roll, but that aioli did give it a bit of a sweet kick. I just wish they went a little bit more in with the boysenberry flavor, as it didn't taste all that much of boysenberry. Overall, I would say the sushi gets a 6 out of 10. The next item, however, absolutely did not have the issue of not tasting like boysenberry, as it was the boysenberry pomegranate smoothie. The smoothie was incredibly delicious, but also very sweet, and the boysenberry flavor was definitely the star of the show with this one. All things considered, the smoothie gets an 8 out of 10. After getting a taste of some of the fantastic items this festival had to offer, we headed across the park to Coaster's Diner so Sam could use his dining plan for the day.
Yeah, we're just gonna go Coasters.
Once we were there, we found out something devastating. Accelerator, which we had seen running just a few hours earlier,
Like hashing it out. Accelerator.
was now closed, most likely due to some sort of technical difficulty to the launch. But as sad as it was, there was nothing we could do about it. So, after we finished up at Coasters, we walked down the boardwalk to our next ride, Bearytales. Bearytales has one of the best queues in the entire park. Entering it, it was immediately apparent to us how whimsical the whole thing felt with its cartoony and wacky feeling. It really makes you feel like you're in a pie factory right out of a cartoon, and it was definitely a plus to be inside for the majority of the time, as it was quite a hot day and once again the line was quite a long one. Not as long as Ghostrider's wait, but it was still probably about an hour. So, when we finally got to the front of the line, staring at that excellent mural adorning the back wall of the station, we were quite eager to hop in our cars, grab our Boysenberry Jam blasters, and blast our way to the fair. The first thing that hits you when you enter the first room of the ride is the smell. The room pumps in delicious smell of boysenberry pies. The room is also quite hot, simulating the heat of a room filled with ovens. It's in this room that old Elderberry recites the main story of the ride.
Why, hello, Elderberry here, welcoming you to the Berry Family Pie Factory. I'm so excited I can hardly bear it. Now, time's a-ticking, so let's help my family ready for the fair by collecting berry pies.
The ride then takes you through a series of themed rooms on your journey to the fair, collecting berry pies for the family and keeping them out of the hands of Crafty Coyote and his pups.
Hey, pause off that line. Crafty Coyote is at it again, and he's rallied his pups too.
The whimsical atmosphere and silly cartoony nature of the ride is very unique in Knott's lineup. The ride fits perfectly into the park, and it's most certainly an upgrade from the old Journey to the Iron Reef dark ride that used to be in its place. And the ride is not all screens like you might expect from a shooting dark ride, as it actually has quite a few practical effects and set dressings, one of which is actually my favorite part of the ride, the infamous Thunder Cave. course, once you defeat Crafty Coyote and help the Berry family present their award-winning pie at the fair, you yourself get presented with your scores for the ride, and as you might expect, I absolutely destroyed the rest of my group. Overall, Knott's Bearytales Return to the Fair is an excellent and charming new addition to the Knott's lineup that I will give a solid 7 out of 10. Its whimsical and charming atmosphere is unlike anything else in the park, and it is most certainly superior to Voyage to the Iron Reef. But after we got off the ride, walked down the stairs out of the station, we thought it was about time to once again use our tasting cards to see more of what the Boysenberry Festival had to offer. The next item I decided to get was the deconstructed lemonade. Now what on earth does that mean? Do they give you a lemon wedge, a glass of water, and a sugar packet and say, go for it? It turns out all deconstructed actually means is lemonade with berries in it. Now it's not quite as ridiculous as it first sounds, because the berries used in the drink are raspberries, blackberries, and loganberries, the 3 berries that boysenberries are a cross between. So it's the boysenberry that's deconstructed. Still gimmicky though. But how's the taste? Well, I am happy to report it tastes like lemonade with berries in it. So it's obviously pretty good. 7 out of 10, as it loses half a point for the gimmick of it. Now, sipping on this lemonade in the hot sun, we looked over at the cooling river of the Calico River Rapids and thought about how nice that cooling water would feel right now. And then we noticed the line, and despite it going all the way back near the entrance, we decided it'd be worth the wait. And the fact that the queue was mostly covered entirely with trees was also not a negative. So we walked up to the entrance and stepped in line for this wild river rafting expedition. The queue for this ride might just be my favorite in the whole park. It's covered with pine trees, and you can see a lot of theming and animatronics for the ride ahead. But we'll get to those later. For now, we would have to wait, in what was probably the longest line yet, easily hitting the 2-hour mark. But once we were in the Pots and Coulter cabin, we knew we did not have much more waiting to go. The cabin is the best piece of theming in the whole queue. The set piece genuinely feels like an early pioneer's cabin with all the knickknacks on the shelves and the very cozy looking bearskin bed. After passing the cabin, you enter the turntable, where you will be assigned a raft and set off on a wild expedition into the Calico River territory. The story for this ride is that you're embarking on an expedition to chart the rivers of the Calico territory, with the help of famous explorers John Potts and John Coulter. On your expedition, you will encounter many creatures, both known and unknown, during your journey. You start your journey off by passing under a sluice where a pesky woodpecker has poked holes in the trough, already getting you just a little bit wet, before passing by some rattling snakes, a howling wolf, and a fur trapper shooting at you from his cabin, who is a great-looking animatronic, by the way. You then pass several more animal animatronics, including a baby bear, a chicken coop, a mountain lion, and the mama bear, as well as traverse some rapid sections that are sure to get someone on the raft soaked. You then pass under Pony Express's tunnel and into a dark and terrifying cave. It is in this cave where you will encounter my personal favorite animatronic in the park, and that's the Bigfoot animatronic, which genuinely looks massive on the ride and is quite intimidating. After the cave, you traverse some more rough rapids before ascending the lift hill back up to the turntable, ending your exhilarating ride on Calico River Rapids. Overall, this ride is honestly incredible and is my current favorite rapids ride I have done, just barely edging out Grizzly River Run and California Adventure. The animatronics and atmosphere is what give this ride a solid 8.5 out of 10, and it is most certainly one of the best rides in the park. And sadly, it would also be our last. The crowds, combined with our exhaustion from waiting in lines all day, not to mention that at this point Silver Bullet had also closed, and so had Sierra Sidewinder. With half the coasters being closed, it meant the others were swarmed with people on an already packed day, caused us to make the tough decision to make this our last ride of the day. So we decided to spend the rest of our day completing our tasting cards, enjoying the atmosphere of the park, and looking at all the shops. But speaking of completing our tasting cards, that is exactly what we set off to do next. The next item that I decided to try was the trio peppers with sausage and boysenberry polenta, and this was by far my favorite item of the whole day. The sausage was perfectly crisp on the outside and snapped with flavor as you bit into it. The peppers and onions were perfectly cooked and caramelized, and the boysenberry polenta, while not tasting very strongly of boysenberries, did have a bit of boysenberry sweetness and was perfectly creamy and starchy, offsetting the sausage and peppers perfectly. Overall, I think this is a solid 9.5 out of 10. After the incredible sausage, peppers, and polenta, my next item was the pozole with boysenberry topping. This was a very tasty soup, especially with the little squeeze of lemon that came with it. The boysenberry topping added a bit of sweetness, and the chips added a nice crunch to offset the soup. Overall, I would give the pozole a 8 out of 10. From here on out, I actually did not take much footage. I was just exhausted from waiting in lines and standing up to the point where I actually forgot to take footage of my last food item, the boysenberry elote. So while I talk about it, here's a picture from Knott's website. The elote was incredible. The boysenberry butter was slightly sweet, combining well with the sweet and charred corn, and the mayo was a perfect binder to secure the crumbly cojita cheese onto the corn. My only qualm with the dish was the lack of any heat. Other than that, it was definitely my second favorite of the night, scoring an 8.5 out of 10. Overall, my thoughts on the festival are very positive. Everything I tried was incredibly good, and the tasting cards were very reasonably priced for the amount of food you were getting. This is my overall ranking for every item from my least favorite to my favorite, with my least favorite being the sushi, as it was the least special, and my favorite being the sausage. The overall score for my experience with the Boysenberry Festival would have to be a 9 out of 10. Amazing food at a very reasonable price. I would definitely recommend visiting during the festival at some point and snagging one of those tasting cards. The rest of the day was pretty much spent walking around and shopping. Enjoying the atmosphere of Ghost Town was a real pleasure and something I have not been able to do on my more ride-oriented trips. And I bought this Ghostrider Nano Coaster, so that's pretty cool. After that, we were pretty much done for the day, so we decided to head out. This day really was quite fun. Despite the numerous ride closures and the ridiculous crowds, you could never go wrong with getting away, spending time with friends, and riding some fantastic rides and eating some delicious food. The day might not have been perfect, but it was still a day at the farm. And any day at the farm is a good day at the farm. Thank you so much for watching the first ever episode of Amusement Adventures. And yes, I am well aware that is a terrible name. However, I could not think of a better one. And don't worry, I plan on making a lot more of these videos whenever I visit a park. In the meantime, I intend to post other videos like a Planet Coaster Let's Play series, among others, every other week. So be sure to stay tuned for those. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I will see you next time.